Have you ever stopped and thought, why did I say yes to that? Or, why did that thing suddenly feel like something I absolutely had to buy? It often isn't just a lapse in judgment. It might be these deep psychological triggers getting activated. So today we're doing a deep dive into Dr. Robert Cialdini's, classic work, The Psychology of Persuasion. It's this amazing map of the subtle but really powerful forces influencing us. We're going to unpack his weapons of influence, try and shed some light on how they actually work.
That's exactly right. And these aren't just, some clever sales tactics. They're described as universal principles, almost like default settings in our behavior. They can lead us to act in these really predictable ways. So our aim is to kind of break down these mechanisms, not just so you can spot when they're being used on you, but also to understand how common they are in marketing, politics, even just, everyday interactions.
Yeah, get ready for some aha moments, I think. Because once you see these principles, you really do start noticing them absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into it. Our journey starts with this foundational idea, automaticity, this click-whir response Cialdini talks about. It's present in animals, sure, but also very much in humans, like pre-programmed tapes that get played when a specific trigger appears.
Right, and what's so intriguing is how often these patterns are just, blindly mechanical, as Cialdini puts it. Take the mother turkey, usually a great mom, right? But almost all her mothering instincts are triggered by just one thing. The cheep, cheep sound of her chicks. Their smell, their feel, their look, almost irrelevant. Ethologists did this experiment, kind of wild. They put a stuffed polecat, a natural enemy, near the mother turkey, but they put a little recorder inside that made the cheep, cheep sound.
And she mothered it.
Seriously mothered it. But then, get this, a real live chick that couldn't make the sound, she'd ignore it, or sometimes even attack it. It's just this pure automatic reaction, click, cheep, cheep, whir mothering behavior.
Wow. Okay, and before we feel too smug about, lower animals, this same click-whir thing shows up starkly in humans. There's Ellen Langer's famous study at Harvard, the Xerox machine line. It illustrates this perfectly. So she had people asked to cut in line. First request, excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I'm in a rush? Compliance, really high, 94%.
Okay, makes sense. Good reason.
Then the request without a reason. Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine? Compliance dropped way down, 60%.
Right, as you'd expect.
But here's the kicker. The third request. Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I have to make some copies?
Which is not really a reason at all. It's stating the obvious.
Exactly. No new information. But compliance, 93%, almost identical to the good reason request.
It's amazing. It shows how the word because itself just triggers this automatic compliance. Our brains hear because and sort of switch off the critical thinking for a second. Click right.
It really highlights a vulnerability, doesn't it, in how we process information using these shortcuts. So how does this play out day to day? Well, think about the expensive equals good stereotype. We all kind of fall for it sometimes. Cialdini tells this great story about a friend who owned a jewelry store in Arizona. She was struggling to sell some turquoise pieces.
Right, they just weren't moving.
So she scribbled a note to her assistant before leaving on a trip. Price everything in display case by 12, hoping to just get rid of them.
But the assistant misread it.
Misread it completely and doubled the price instead, priced by 2.
Oh, no. So what happened?
She came back a few days later, and every single piece had sold out. These wealthy tourists, who likely knew little about turquoise quality, saw the high price.
And assumed it meant high quality. Click, whir. Price became the trigger feature for quality. And, this raises that key question. Why do we rely on these shortcuts? It seems risky. But the reality is our world is just incredibly complex. We're bombarded with information, with decisions to make. We simply don't have the time, the energy, or frankly, the mental bandwidth to analyze every single aspect of every choice. So stereotypes, rules of thumb, these automatic responses, they become necessary for efficiency, even if they sometimes lead us wrong.
Okay, so that's automaticity. Let's shift gears now to another really powerful weapon of influence, reciprocation. This is the rule that says basically we should try to repay in kind what someone else has given us. It's deeply ingrained.
Oh, absolutely. It's way more than just, being polite. It feels like a genuine obligation. Societies actively teach and enforce this. Think about how many languages use phrases like much obliged as a way of saying thank you. It directly links gratitude to obligation. There was this university professor Cialdini mentions. He sent Christmas cards one year to a list of complete strangers.
Just out of the blue?
Totally out of the blue. And what happened? He received this flood, an absolute flood of Christmas cards back from these people. People who had no idea who he was. They just got a card, felt the obligation, and automatically sent one back.
That's fascinating. And you see this used strategically too, right?
Definitely. The Hare Krishna Society is a classic example. Back in the 70s, their public image wasn't great, and donations were down, so they changed tactics. Instead of just asking for money, they started giving people something, first usually a flower or maybe a book, uninvited.
They just walk up and hand you a flower.
Exactly. Even if you tried to refuse it, they'd insist. And that small, unsolicited gift created this powerful sense of indebtedness. People who might otherwise have walked right by, who maybe even disliked the group, felt compelled to give a donation to discharge that feeling of obligation. The gift triggered reciprocation.
And here's where it gets really potentially manipulative. This rule can trigger unfair exchanges. A small initial favor can make you feel obligated to return a much, much larger one.
Precisely. That leads into the rejection then retreat technique, sometimes called the door-in-the-face technique. Think about, say, a Boy Scout selling tickets. First, he asks you to buy some $5 raffle tickets. You're probably saying no, right? That's the big, likely to be rejected request.
Yeah, probably.
Then he immediately retreats to a smaller request. Okay, well, if you don't want tickets, how about buying one of our $1 chocolate bars?
And now you feel like he's done you a favor by backing down.
Exactly. He made a concession, retreating from the big request. So the rule of reciprocation pressures you to make a concession too by agreeing to the smaller request. Sales of the chocolate bars go way up using this method.
It feels like a negotiation, even though it's kind of engineered.
It is, and it has implications far beyond selling chocolate. Look at the Watergate break-in planning.
Really? How does that connect?
Well, G. Gordon Liddy initially proposed these utterly outrageous plans to the committee to re-elect the president. First, a $1 million plan involving mugging squads, kidnapping, sabotage, yachts. Just crazy stuff.
Which they rejected, obviously.
Then Liddy came back with a slightly less insane, but still pretty wild, $500,000 plan. They rejected that too. Finally, he presented the more reasonable $250,000 plan, which included breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate.
And that one they approved.
John Mitchell and Jeb Magruder, who made the decision, later indicated they still thought it was a bad idea. But Liddy had conceded twice, retreating from his extreme initial proposals. They felt, in Magruder's words, reluctant to send him away with nothing. They felt obligated to concede to his concession. They took ownership of that final, flawed plan because they felt they'd negotiated it down. The reciprocity pressure was immense.
Wow, that puts a chilling perspective on it. Okay, next principle. Commitment and consistency. This is the idea that once we make a choice, especially a public one, we feel this almost obsessive need to be and to appear consistent with that commitment.
It's a powerful driver, absolutely. And, often it's a good thing. Consistency is generally seen as a positive trait, reliable, trustworthy. It also serves as another one of those mental shortcuts. Once we've made up our mind about something, we don't have to keep thinking hard about it. We just activate the consistency tape. Cialdini points to studies of racetrack bettors. People become significantly more confident their horse will win after they've placed the bet.
Even though nothing about the horse or the race has actually changed.
Nothing at all. Just the act of committing placing the bet makes them need to believe more strongly in the correctness of that decision to stay consistent.
And businesses, well, they've figured out how to harness this drive very effectively. The toy industry's Christmas strategy is a prime example Cialdini discusses. It's quite clever, if a bit cynical.
How does that work?
So big toy companies heavily advertise certain popular toys leading up to Christmas. They create huge demand.
Right, the must-have toy of the year.
But then they deliberately undersupply the stores with those specific toys. So parents promise their kids the toy, go to the store.
And it's sold out everywhere. Frustrating.
Exactly. So the parents end up buying other substitute toys to put under the tree, just so the child has something to open.
Okay.
But the commitment was made. The parent promised that specific toy. Then, after Christmas, in January or February, when sales are usually slow,
the ads for the original undersupplied toys start running again.
Precisely. The kids see the ads and say, "You promised." And the parents, driven by the need to be consistent with their prior commitment, troop back to the stores and buy the toy they couldn't find before Christmas.
Boosting post-holiday sales significantly.
Wow.
Wow. It leverages the parents' commitment to their child. And public commitments seem especially powerful in locking us in, don't they?
Definitely. There's a story about a woman who wanted to quit smoking. She tried many times and failed. Finally, she wrote down her intention on cards. I will never smoke another cigarette. And she signed them.
Okay, a personal commitment.
But then she sent these signed cards to everyone she cared about, her father, brother, boss, best friend, even a guy she just started dating who she really wanted to impress.
Oh, wow. That's really putting yourself out there.
Absolutely. And she said the thought of all those people thinking less of her if she failed was what finally got her through the cravings. Even the new boyfriend, who she later decided she didn't even like that much. The public commitment was the key.
That makes sense. And we see a similar dynamic, maybe even more intense, in things like difficult initiation rites. Think fraternity hell week or military boot camp.
Those seem designed to be grueling.
They are, and often seemingly pointless or absurd, but that very difficulty fosters incredible loyalty and commitment to the group. People value what they have to struggle to achieve. The effort and hardship involved in the initiation makes the group seem more attractive and worthwhile. It cements commitment through shared struggle.
So for us personally, this means if we make a choice, especially a tough one, we might start kind of inventing reasons to justify it after the fact.
Yes, exactly. We build justifications to support our commitment. And this is exploited by things like the lowball tactic in sales.
How does the lowball work? Is it like the rejection then retreat?
Sort of the opposite, actually. A car dealer, for instance, might offer you an incredibly good price on a car. A real bargain. Maybe hundreds below competitors.
Okay, sounds great.
You get excited, you agree to the price, maybe you start filling out forms, take it for another test drive, imagine driving it home. You make a mental commitment.
Right, you're invested now.
Then, just before you sign the final papers, something happens. The salesperson comes back looking apologetic. Oh, there's a mistake in the calculation, or my manager won't approve that trade-in value, or we forgot to add the cost of the air conditioning. So the great deal evaporates.
Exactly. The initial price advantage that got you committed is removed. Logically, you should maybe walk away.
But surprisingly often, people still buy the car at the higher price. Why? Because during that commitment process, they've started building their own new reasons for wanting the car. It handles well, I like the color, it's got good mileage. These self-generated justifications make the decision feel right, even after the original lure, the low price, is gone. The commitment holds.
That's subtle. Okay, let's move on to the next principle, social proof. This one feels pretty intuitive. We figure out what's correct or appropriate by looking at what other people think is correct or appropriate. If lots of people are doing something, we tend to assume it's the right thing to do.
It's usually a very efficient shortcut, right? If everyone's looking up at the sky, you probably look up too. Saves thinking. But it also makes us vulnerable, especially when the proof is faked, or when uncertainty causes everyone to just follow everyone else, potentially off a cliff. A simple example, canned laughter on TV shows.
Oh yeah, most people say they hate canned laughter. It sounds so fake.
They do. And yet, TV executives use it relentlessly. Why? Because experiments show it works. Audiences laugh longer and more often and rate jokes as funnier when there's canned laughter added, especially, interestingly, for bad jokes.
So even though we know it's fake, it still influences our reaction.
It seems to. We subconsciously look to others, even fake others, for cues on how to respond, social proof in action.
But the implications get much more serious, even disturbing, in emergency situations. The classic tragic case is Kitty Genovese in New York City back in 1964. She was attacked and stabbed over a period of about 35 minutes.
And the horrifying part was
38 of her neighbors reportedly witnessed parts of the attack from their windows. 38 people. And not one called the police until it was far too late.
It's chilling. How could that happen?
Psychologists Bibb Latane and John Darley developed a theory based on this. They argued that paradoxically, no one helped, precisely because there were so many observers.
How does that work?
Two key factors. First, diffusion of responsibility. When many people are present, the personal responsibility of any one individual is reduced. Someone else must have called, or someone else will surely intervene.
Okay, that makes a sad kind of sense.
The second factor is pluralistic ignorance. In ambiguous situations like hearing screams or seeing something odd, we look to others to gauge the seriousness.
But if everyone else is also looking around, trying to appear calm and figure things out, then everyone sees everyone else doing nothing.
And the collective interpretation becomes, Since nobody else seems concerned, it must not be a real emergency, so nobody acts.
Wow. So the very presence of multiple witnesses makes intervention less likely.
Exactly. So if you're ever in an emergency and need help in a crowd, what's the takeaway?
You have to counteract that uncertainty and diffusion. Don't just yell help. Instead, single out one individual, point directly at them, make eye contact. You in the blue jacket, call 911 right now. Assigning direct, specific responsibility breaks through the bystander effect.
That's really crucial advice.
And social proof is strongest under two conditions: uncertainty, as we've discussed, and similarity. We are most influenced by the actions of people we see as being like us.
Like us. How so?
Cialdini tells a personal story about his young son, Chris, who was terrified of the water and refused to swim without his inflatable ring. His parents tried. A big, confident swim instructor tried. Nothing worked. Chris just clung to that ring.
Okay, typical kid fear maybe.
Then one day at the pool, Chris watched another little boy, Tommy, who was also 3 years old, happily jump in and swim without any ring at all. Chris watched him for a bit, then turned to his father, threw off his own ring, and declared, "Well, I'm 3 years old, and Tommy's 3 years old, and Tommy can swim without a ring, so that means I can too."
And he just jumped in.
Jumped in and swam. The example of a similar peer was more powerful than any adult encouragement. He needed proof from someone like him.
That's a great illustration.
And this reliance on social proof, especially from similar others in uncertain environments, has a much darker side too. Think about the Jonestown mass suicide.
The People's Temple in Guyana.
Exactly. Jim Jones had moved his followers to this isolated jungle settlement. They were cut off in a completely unfamiliar place, facing immense uncertainty about their future and their surroundings. In that state of high uncertainty and isolation, who did they look to for cues on how to act?
Each other. And Jones, of course.
Precisely. The only social proof available was from within the cult. When the command for suicide came, the uncertainty and the powerful influence of seeing similar others complying led to that horrific outcome. There was no external reality check, no dissenting social proof.
A truly terrifying example of social proof gone wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to the next principle. Liking. This one seems almost too obvious, right? We're just more likely to say yes to people we know and like.
It does seem obvious, but the ways this is exploited and how easily liking can be manufactured is pretty eye-opening. Compliance professionals work hard to get us to like them. The Tupperware party is the absolute classic model of leveraging liking.
Right. Someone hosts a party for their friends.
Exactly. You're not just buying plastic containers from a stranger, you're buying them at the home of your friend, the hostess, who gets a cut of the profits. Research cited by Cialdini found the social bond with the hostess was often twice as important in the decision to buy as preference for the actual products.
You feel obligated to your friend, you like her, so you buy something.
Precisely. The warmth, friendship, and sense of obligation are all wrapped up in the sales pitch.
And what's interesting is how superficial factors can trigger this liking effect. Physical attractiveness, for instance.
Yeah, the halo effect. We tend to automatically assign positive traits like talent, kindness, honesty, intelligence to good-looking people. And mostly, we're not even aware we're doing it. Studies show attractive political candidates get more votes just based on looks. Attractive defendants in court cases often get lighter sentences. It's a powerful, unconscious bias.
So just looking good makes people like you more and trust you more.
Essentially, yes. Another factor is similarity. We like people who are like us.
That makes sense. We connect with people who share our background or interests.
And salespeople are explicitly trained to find or even create similarities. They'll look for clues, a golf bag in your car, a college sticker, the town you grew up in, and then mention their own connection, real or invented. They might even subtly mirror your posture, your gestures, your speech patterns. It's called mirroring and matching.
Does that actually work?
Apparently, yes. Insurance sales data, for example, shows people are more likely to buy from salespeople who are similar to them in age, religion, political views, even smoking habits. Similarity breeds liking, and liking leads to sales. Cooperation is another liking trigger. We like people who we feel are working with us towards a common goal.
Like the classic good cop, bad cop routine.
Perfect example. The bad cop acts aggressive, threatening, maybe makes outrageous accusations. He creates fear and antagonism.
Right, he's the enemy.
Then the good cop steps in. He seems reasonable, maybe offers the suspect a coffee, expresses sympathy, perhaps even defends the suspect against the bad cop.
So he seems like an ally.
Exactly. He appears like a savior, someone on the suspect's side, working with them against the bad cop. He leverages contrast and even a little reciprocity for the small favors, like the coffee. This feeling of liking and trust towards the good cop often leads suspects to confess.
It's all about manipulating that feeling of liking and cooperation. Okay, next principle. Authority. We're taught from day one to obey authority figures, parents, teachers, police officers. It's deeply ingrained as the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And this creates a powerful tendency to comply with requests from people we perceive as legitimate authorities, often without really questioning them. Cialdini says we often just stop thinking and start reacting when an authority figure gives an order. The most famous and frankly disturbing demonstration of this is Stanley Milgram's obedience experiment from the 1960s.
The shock experiments, right. I've heard of those. They're pretty infamous.
They are. Ordinary people were recruited for a supposed learning experiment. They were assigned the role of teacher and instructed to give electric shocks to a learner, who is actually an actor, whenever the learner made a mistake on a memory test.
And the shocks got stronger.
Increasingly stronger, yes. Up to levels labeled danger, severe shock, and even XXX beyond that. The learner would grunt, then protest, then yell in pain, complain about a heart condition, and eventually fall silent.
That sounds horrifying.
It was. But the teacher was seated in front of an experimenter, a figure in a lab coat representing scientific authority, who calmly instructed them to continue whenever they hesitated. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue.
And people kept going.
A disturbingly high percentage, around 2/3 of participants, went all the way to the maximum shock level simply because the authority figure told them to, even when they were clearly distressed themselves.
Just obeying orders, even when it seemed morally wrong.
Milgram concluded it showed an extreme willingness of adults to go to almost any lengths on the command of an authority. It's a chilling insight into human behavior.
And this isn't just in extreme lab situations, is it? This deference happens in everyday life, too.
Oh, absolutely. Think about hospitals. Cialdini cites studies showing significant daily medication error rates. One study found a 12% error rate. Another linked 10% of cardiac arrests to medication mistakes. And a major factor, junior staff, nurses, pharmacists, even resident physicians often failing to question orders from the senior attending physician, the clear authority figure, even when the order seems obviously wrong.
Like the famous rectal earache case.
Exactly. A doctor wrote an order for eardrops. Place an order, the nurse read our ear as rear, and dutifully administered the eardrops into the patient's rectum. Neither the patient nor the nurse questioned the bizarre order because it came from the doctor, the authority. Mindless deference.
So it's not just the actual authority, but the symbols of authority that trigger this compliance.
Yes, often it's just the symbols. Titles are a big one. Cialdini mentions a professor friend who noticed people's behavior change completely when they learned his title. Strangers would become more respectful, more formal, less likely to argue, more accepting of his opinions, even, strangely, perceiving him as physically taller. Just the title professor triggered automatic deference.
Clothes are another powerful symbol, right? Uniforms, suits.
Definitely. Remember that study where a man in a business suit jaywalked? Far more people followed him into the street against the light than when the same man was dressed in work clothes. The suit symbolized authority and legitimacy. Con artists use this expertly. The bank examiner scam often involves someone dressed in a very conservative, official-looking business suit, maybe accompanied by someone in a security guard uniform. These symbols command immediate, almost unquestioning compliance, making victims hand over their savings without thinking critically.
So how do we protect ourselves from being unduly influenced by authority or just the symbols of it?
Cialdini suggests asking two key questions when faced with an authority's influence attempt. First, is this authority truly an expert in this particular situation? Someone might be an expert in finance, but that doesn't make their opinion on health matters authoritative.
Okay, check their credentials for relevance. What's the second question?
Second, how trustworthy is this expert likely to be here? How might they benefit if I comply? Are they impartial, or do they have something to gain? Think about Vincent the waiter, another Cialdini example. He boosted his tips by appearing trustworthy.
How did he do that?
When taking the first order from a table, he might subtly steer them away from a slightly more expensive dish towards one that was marginally cheaper. Oh, it's good, but I don't think it's quite as good tonight as the slightly cheaper item.
So he seems like he's looking out for them, not just his wallet.
Exactly. By seeming to argue briefly against his own interest, he established himself as a knowledgeable and trustworthy authority on the menu. Then, when it came to recommending wine or dessert, the customers trusted him completely and usually took his, often more expensive suggestions, and tipped him very well. He played the authority game expertly.
Very clever. Okay, final principle. Scarcity. This is the idea that opportunities, items, information, they all seem more valuable to us when their availability is limited. We want what we might not be able to get.
Right. And again, it often works as a shortcut. Things that are rare or difficult to obtain are often more valuable. So we use availability as a quick gauge of quality. Cialdini shares a personal story about visiting the Mormon temple near his home. He'd lived there for years, never felt any desire to go inside.
Okay.
Then he read a newspaper article saying a special, normally restricted section of the temple would be open to the public, but only for a very limited time. Suddenly, he felt this strong urge to see it. Not because the temple itself had become more interesting, but purely because the opportunity to see that restricted part was about to disappear. Scarcity created desire.
And businesses use this all the time, don't they? Limited time offer, only 3 left in stock.
Constantly. Limited number tactics, deadline tactics, sale ends Friday. It creates a sense of urgency, playing on our fear of missing out, FOMO. Think about movie ads. Exclusive, limited engagement ends soon. That's like triple scarcity packed into 5 words.
Or the salesperson who tells you, I can offer you this price today, but I can't guarantee it tomorrow, or company policy says I can't come back.
Exactly. It puts pressure on you to decide now by framing it as a potentially lost opportunity. Often it's just a tactic, but a very effective one.
Why do we react so strongly against losing options or having our freedom restricted?
Well, Cialdini explains this using the concept of psychological reactance. It's this tendency we have to react against threats to our freedoms by wanting the forbidden thing even more. It emerges strongly around age 2. The terrible twos are partly about asserting autonomy, and then it peaks again during the teenage years. Any parent of a teenager knows how telling them they can't do something often makes them want to do it even more.
Right, the forbidden fruit effect.
Exactly. Think Romeo and Juliet. Parental opposition didn't quench their love, it probably intensified it. The restriction made their desire stronger.
And this applies to information too, not just actions.
Absolutely. Censorship is a prime example. When information is banned or restricted, say, a speech is canceled due to controversial content, or a book is labeled for adults only. What happens?
People become much more interested in hearing that speech or reading that book.
Precisely. Not only do they want the censored information more, but studies show they also tend to view that information more favorably, to believe it more, even if they haven't actually heard or read it yet. Just knowing it's restricted makes it seem more valuable and potentially more true.
We see this in courtrooms too, right?
Yeah.
With evidence the judge tells the jury to disregard.
Yes. If a judge tells a jury to ignore a piece of evidence, like maybe the defendant has liability insurance, research shows jurors often give that specific piece of evidence more weight in their deliberations, not less. The instruction to disregard creates reactance, making the forbidden information seem more important.
Okay, so scarcity isn't just about limited items. It's also about limited information.
That's a really key point. Cialdini describes a study with wholesale beef buyers. One group was just told about an impending beef shortage, and they increased their orders significantly.
Makes sense. Standard scarcity.
But a second group was told the same information about the shortage, and they were told that this information came from exclusive contacts, that it wasn't generally available to the public.
Ah, so the information itself was scarce.
Exactly. And that group's orders didn't just double, they increased 6-fold. 600% more than the baseline. The scarcity of the information made it vastly more persuasive.
Wow. Exclusive information is powerful stuff.
And there's another nuance. Newly experienced scarcity is often more potent than long-standing scarcity. We react more strongly when something has recently become less available than if it's always been hard to get.
Like if freedoms are suddenly taken away?
Precisely. That often triggers stronger resistance than living under long-term restrictions. And competition for scarce resources really ramps things up. Think about auctions or bidding wars. Cialdini mentions how ABC television paid a then unheard of $3.3 million for a single showing of the movie The Poseidon Adventure.
Just one showing. Why so much?
Because they got caught up in a bidding war with the other major networks, CBS and NBC. It became less about the movie's actual value and more about beating the competition for this scarce prize, the first network showing. Barry Diller, the ABC executive who made the winning bid, even admitted later they knew they'd probably lose money on it, but the competitive arousal fueled by scarcity drove the price to irrational levels.
Okay, so scarcity is powerful, often irrational. How do we defend against it? When we feel that pressure, that emotional rush from a limited time offer.
That emotional arousal itself should be your cue. Recognize it. Feel yourself getting caught up in the urgency. That's the signal to pause. Step back, take a breath, calm down. Then ask yourself the critical question. Why do I want this thing? Is it for its utility, its function, to drive the car, to eat the cookie, to use the information? Or is it primarily just because it's scarce or becoming unavailable?
Focus on the merit, not the limitation.
Exactly. Remember, scarce cookies don't actually taste any better. If you want the item for its function, its scarcity doesn't improve that function one bit. Separate the desire for the item itself from the arousal caused by its scarcity.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground today. From those automatic cheap triggers all the way to the, intense frenzy of competition for scarce resources. These weapons of influence, as Cialdini calls them, they really are everywhere, always operating.
They really are. And look, understanding them isn't about becoming cynical or mistrustful of everyone. It's about becoming more discerning, more aware. It's about recognizing when our automatic pilot is serving us well and when it's potentially being hijacked by someone trying to exploit those predictable responses.
So the next time you feel that pull, that almost irresistible urge to grab the limited edition, whatever it is, or you find yourself about to say yes to something that maybe feels a bit off, remember this stuff. Take that pause. Assess the situation using your thinking brain, not just the click or response. And maybe ask yourself that key question.
Right. Knowing what I now know about how these principles work, if I could rewind time just a minute, would I still make the same choice based purely on the merits?
Sometimes just asking that is enough, isn't it? To break the spell and avoid doing something you might regret.
It's a powerful self-check. It forces you back to evaluating the actual request or item, separating it from the persuasive packaging designed to get that automatic yes.
Well, we really hope this deep dive helps you navigate the, let's face it, pretty complex world of influence out there with a bit more awareness, maybe a bit more confidence.